I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was a little loud, sorry. All right, we'll call this meeting to order, and we'll start with our agenda approval, deletions, additions. Dr. Baracco.
Thank you, Mrs. Suze. You do have one slight alteration to the personnel packet under Roman numeral 7B1. Other than that is the original agenda as you received last week.
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Dr. Malco.
Second.
We have a second by Dr. Medlin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Do we have any correspondence, Mr. Marshall?
Nothing to report this evening, thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll move on to our liaison committee updates. Mr. Marshall?
The same answer, nothing to report.
Mrs. Kelly?
Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Dr. Medlin?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Dr. Malco?
Lake Central Education Foundation, our next fundraiser is May 27th at Panera. And with legislative, I believe that Mr. James is going to be talking about it, and also we have Mr. Slager here, so it would be silly for me to try to talk about it. So I'm going to forego my comments. Thank you.
And I also have nothing to report. So we'll move on to our official school board business topic, consent agenda. Dr. Baracco?
Thank you again. Seek board approval for the minutes from our special board meeting on April 19th, as well as our regular board meeting from April 19th. And also seek board approval for the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures you received in your packets last week.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall,
Second.
second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move right into our official school board business topics, regular agenda. Dr. Baracco.
No
No
public
public
comments at this time.
comments.
So we would like to kick it off now by having Mrs. Mucha come up and read some comments about this year's retirees.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. First, we're going to have Dave Carlson. His voice was always so keel. He had the kids' attention, was respected, wonderful sense of humor, willingness to speak and help his colleagues, honored to work alongside a stellar educator, has endless compassion, patience, kindness, understanding. Students could wake up in the morning and feel good about coming into his classroom. A man of faith, honesty, integrity, perseverance, a true role model that students need in their life, a great team member and friend, outstanding teacher, a pillar of calmness, reliability, professionalism, never let his emotions get the best of him, and the one that the students always spoke of highly and wanted as their math teacher. That's a pretty high praise. He will be missed, but the staff is extremely proud of him and his years of service. Good luck and best wishes, Dave. Leslie Renee Dickerson. Renee has been a valued employee of the Transportation Department over the past 13 years. That's a lot of time to work with kids on a bus. Her love and compassion for her students she transported brought joy to her day. The office staff will miss her hearing about her and her shopping partner, Diane, adventures and sales they were able to glean over their layovers. The staff of the high school, Clark and Pfeiffer, miss her and wish her nothing but the best in retirement. Congratulations.
Excuse me, Mrs. Mucha. Could we have the retirees stay down front after you're announced? Because we'd like to get a group photo, and it will happen right down here. So if you just want to take a seat, and then we can get the photo later. Thank you.
Bev Doherty. Serving the students and staff at Kaler for 29 years as a paraprofessional, Bev went above and beyond in helping students achieve success. For many years, she worked extensively with our ELL population. She was always searching for resources to help her students, families, and teachers, and she never met a challenge she couldn't overcome. Her kindness and dedication to the students, staff, and families at Kaler will never be forgotten. Hope you continue to enjoy your retirement, Bev. You will always be a Kaler Colt. Judy Fair. Judy, we are so happy for you and that you will get to spend more time with your grandchildren and playing pickleball. Judy is one of the kindest souls to walk the halls of Grimmer Middle School and someone that's a friend to all. We're going to miss your calming voice and all you do for the students of Grimmer Middle School. Enjoy your retirement. You've earned it. Tina Garcia. Tina spent 38 years in the Lake Central School Corporation. She's one of those very special people who truly loved her profession's work. Before retiring this year, Mrs. Garcia was a teacher of children, not grade level or material. Her care for children went so far beyond academics. We could always count on Tina to welcome any and all students into her classroom and teach them with dignity and respect. If people were curious about what a teacher's heart looked like, they just needed to watch Tina teach for a few short moments to get a true definition. She was always a great colleague and friend to other adults at the school, willing to help anyone who needed it. Her legacy at Piper will always be one of kindness, compassion, humor, and teacher of the whole child. She is dearly missed every day. We wish her all the happiness life after school has to offer. Cheryl Garris. There isn't enough time or words to describe what she has meant to the staff and students at Grimmer Middle School, but she's one of the first people to introduce herself to new people and make lifelong friends. Cheryl was someone we could always count on when things were bad, and the first person in line to push things forward when things were good. Cheryl's commitment to the students was something that is inspiring to this day. Cheryl was always the first person to congratulate students for a job well done and had a special tradition of sending cards to students, communicating how proud she was of their accomplishments. Cheryl will be greatly missed, though we're happy she'll be able to do something she loves with more frequency, golf. She's the kind of educator many would call the core of Grimmer. She was always there for students, teachers, and all of the Lake Central community. Even someone who only works at Grimmer 1 to 2 days a week could always feel included, informed, and appreciated. She always worked tirelessly to make things better for our students every year. Carol Gernerlich. Carol was employed by Lake Central for 22 years as a supportive classroom aide at Grimmer Middle School. She brought high energy and was always willing to lend a hand to her teachers and students. She was a no-nonsense aide, but full of jokes and laughter whenever she wasn't helping out in the classroom. She made lifelong friends and memories at Grimmer, which will last a lifetime. Her presence and positive attitude will continue to be missed. We wish her the best. Leroy Held. There he is. I like this first line. It says, Leroy is a pure example of the proof is in the pudding. Leroy came to Lake Central when the freshman center was built, and he has seen it all. Being at the high school for well over 25 years made Leroy the senior custodian for a long time. His willingness and knowledge to help anyone with a task and his kind-hearted nature made it easy for everyone to like him. Just ask all the teachers on the 3rd floor. Not only a great dependable worker, but truly a great guy. He will be missed. Linda Hensley. Linda was a teacher who really cared about her students, encouraged them to grow and flourish, and made each student in her class feel special. Enthusiastic and took a genuine interest in all of her students, was very in tune to the students who were struggling. She was one who cared deeply about others, was an excellent educator. Clark wishes her all the best in retirement, and many years to come, she'll be missed as a colleague and a friend. Congratulations on her many years of service to Lake Central School Corporation. Cindy Hurley. Cindy stayed on top of state requirements and changes and always advocated for the business program here at LC. She introduced new courses to our course offerings like fashion marketing to increase female students in the business program, sports and entertainment marketing, and strategic marketing. She had hands-on projects, field experience to help students develop skills in high-demand areas. She was also a supportive co-worker. She would share ideas, projects, and resources with colleagues and offer assistance when needed in the department. Moreover, she would extend a hand if a teacher needed help. She was a leader and instrumental in the development of personal finance curriculum for the state. A positive light in the department, a team player always willing to help. Her expertise will be greatly missed. Patty Kalina is a major part of the special education department for 29 years. She has worked to develop an English resource program that supports students at all grade levels in their English classes. In recent years, her program has evolved to include not only students with IEPs, but those with 504s and English language learners, as well as those that simply struggle with different concepts. She's developed a strong program that will continue after she leaves due to the hard work that she has put into it. She will be missed at Lake Central High School. Gayleen Kozer. Gayleen provided 28 years of dedicated service to the students, staff, and families at Lake Central High School and Kaler Middle School. During her time, she served as a front office and guidance secretary. Her attention to detail and knowledge base were a couple of strengths that greatly benefited the schools that she worked at. She also gave her time and expertise to mentor the other middle school guidance secretaries. Congratulations, Gayleen, on your retirement. You're leaving big shoes to fill. Susan Kacharski. I'm not sure if Susan is always aware, but I always referred to her as the maestro. As you know, a maestro is by definition an artistic master, reserved for people with enormous amounts of skill and talent, and that sums up Susan perfectly. As a maestro, she would direct her fourth grade class as if she was conducting a symphony. Everything she did with her students had a purpose and a passion. She sang, and they sang in response. She used humor throughout the day, and she truly loved her time with her students, and they with her. She is so quick-witted that everyone around her has trouble containing their laughter. She brought an energy to our building that will truly be missed. One could say it was time to relax, but knowing Susan, the maestro is just beginning to conduct a new piece of music on her life's journey with her husband, David. You will certainly be missed at Protzman. Jim Lesniewski. Jim retired from Lake Central School Corporation with 15 years of service as the head custodian at Watson Elementary. He's very knowledgeable about Watson and facilitated keeping the building in great shape. Very kind and dependable. Although Watson is sad to see him retire, we're happy he's able to enjoy his new home in Florida. He did not give us the address. He will always be part of the Watson family. Becky Lesniewski, one of the most pleasant bus drivers to ever watch on video. The bond and relationship Becky has built with her students over the last 28 years is second to none. The mutual respect between the driver and her student is evident in the love of her profession. Lake Central, Kaler, and Bivage have had the pleasure of having Mrs. Becky with them day in, day out, and with her nothing but the best in her retirement. Jim Lord. During his 20 years as a paraprofessional, Jim left a lasting impression on the students and staff at Kaler Middle School. He hardly ever missed a day of work, formed great connections with the students and staff, and always greeted everyone he saw in the hallways. He was tough on the outside, but soft-hearted on the inside. His sense of humor always made people smile. Best wishes in retirement, Jim. You will be missed. Diane McKinley. She's the other half of the shopping duo. Our early riser, first one in the barn every morning. 24 years of experience as a bus driver will be missed. Over the last 6 years, Diana was part of the Lake Central School Corporation safety team. She played an integral part in our safety programs that were performed for our elementary students. The students and parents at Briar Ridge Subdivision have truly missed their driver. Sue Peller. Sue Peller was a dedicated employee in the Lake Central School Corporation for 21 years. She started as a sub in 1999. Then during the 01-02 school year, she worked as a paraprofessional at Grimmer. She's been working as a para at Bibbage ever since. Through her patience and kindness, Sue helped students achieve their potential and gain self-confidence across all school settings. It was these attributes that made working with students with disabilities seamless. She developed a strong bond with many students that lasted well beyond their years at Bibbage. She was truly an integral part of many students' successes at Bibbage. Since retiring last August, she has been busy moving to a new house, spending time with her family and grandchildren, and babysitting for her great nephew. Congratulations on your retirement. Mary Ellen Plabansky. If you ever met Mrs. P, even for a brief moment, you understand why she's loved by everyone at Pfeiffer. Her love for the students at Pfeiffer for the past 23 years goes well beyond the school day. She attended Title I nights and other school functions willingly and gladly volunteered her time and efforts for the students' benefits. She got to know her kids, spent time listening to them, laughing with them, crying with them, reading with them, helping them learn, and most importantly, praying for them. Mrs. Blabansky is strong in her faith, and it showed in her care for the students and other adults at school. At staff gatherings, everybody wanted to sit by Mary because of the positive energy and humor in her conversations. Her high-pitched voice, infectious laughter, crossing herself every time she laughed about something, compassion for everyone, and genuine kind-heartedness are all aspects of Mrs. P that are truly missed by Pfeiffer each and every day. We wish her the best in all her future endeavors. Karen Savitsky. There she is. She's been involved at Pfeiffer for 27 years, starting as a great playground aide and finishing up as our stellar librarian. Karen's influence as librarian is found everywhere in the school, but mostly in the lives that she touched. The time after school hours spent on creating the perfect welcoming environment to our library goes far beyond and beyond every expectation. Karen's book fairs were events that needed to be witnessed to be believed. Karen made our library an extension of every classroom, pulling books for teachers to go along with specific units. Years after students leave Pfeiffer, they come back to visit her at book fair, fun fair, and basically anytime the doors are open, due to her positive influence in all of our students' lives. Her Betty Rubble giggle, I almost have to hear that, will forever echo throughout the rooms and halls of Pfeiffer. She will be remembered for her unwavering love of her family, unbelievably strong work ethic, kindness beyond description, a gigantic heart, and her deep compassion for all the students and staffs here at Pfeiffer. We wish Karen all the joy that life outside of Pfeiffer's library can bring.
Excuse me, Terry, would you have them move down? Can you move down this way, retirees? Yeah. There. Perfect. We were missing you. We couldn't see you. Yeah.
Teresa Schoen. Don't cry, because then I will. Do we start with her work ethic, her ability to solve problems, her dedication to Elsie, or her crazy sense of humor? She has them all. From the moment Teresa arrived at Lake Central 10 years ago, you knew she would have a lasting impact on the district. She's one of the most genuine and hardworking educators that we met, and I told her not to retire. If you were to drive by Central office after school, most nights the lights on was Teresa's, and not just because the sensor's broken. During her time as director of elementary education, she worked tirelessly to develop an outstanding curriculum and significantly improve instruction so our elementary students have a strong foundation to move forward. Often we hear a great deal about the accolades at the high school where students graduate, but if it were not for the hard work of elementary and people like Teresa Schoen, these achievements would never be possible. Teresa has truly been driven in every decision she's made by what's best for kids. She wants every student's experience to be exceptional, no matter what their background. She's advocated for all students, and over the course of her tenure, both as Coling principal and the curriculum director, she helped strengthen both our RTI and high ability program to better serve students at both ends of the spectrum. Even in a district this big, Teresa has managed to build meaningful relationships with all teachers and staff due to her warmth, positivity, and that crazy sense of humor. She is highly regarded by everyone she meets, beloved by the elementary principals and central office family. We'll miss her stories, her laughter, and a concern for all of her LC family. She's not only a colleague, but a friend. Thank you for making LC a better and a brighter place. Enjoy. Cindy Seidel. Cindy was a standout worker in food service for many years. He then became a standout custodian for well over 10 years. She worked all 3 shifts and for some time took care of central office in the TAP building and did a very good job. Being very versatile and willing to adapt to the ongoing changes with natural leadership abilities, quick, logical thinking was her strong suit. Never was there a task too big or too small that she couldn't tackle. She's a great worker who will be missed. Denise Snyder. Denise has held various roles at Clark Middle School. She was a front office secretary, then moved to the media center. She loved her role as a media specialist, often decorating the center with seasonal Christmas trees. Students enjoyed going to the media center to see what contest was happening or to check out the latest decor. Denise had a love for reading. She loved to have authors visit the school and present their stories to the students. Book signings were a huge hit. Denise's goal was to try and find a book for each student and encourage them to try it. The goal was to encourage reading. It was her mission to find something of interest for each student. Denise is an avid tennis player and enjoys being a grandmother. Best wishes from the Clark Middle School staff. Cindy Wapinski. Cindy's been a part of the transportation department for the past 14 and a half years. Cindy has always been a team player, willing to cover routes whenever needed. During her time away from the transportation department, Cindy volunteered her time and love and animals of the St. John Animal Control, giving back to the community in her own way. The love and compassion for her craft will be missed by the students and staff at Coling and Clark.
Retirees, could you just stand right there by Terry and Dr. Bracco and face us?
She wants to get a picture.
I can't take it.
Yeah, sure. Can you put it on?
Sure. Take a photo.
Dr. Baracco, can you get in there? Oh, I am.
Yeah, just one big picture. Just scoot on in. There you go. Leroy, come on in a little bit
Oh,
more.
yeah, I got him, I got him.
Okay. All right, you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, now let's take our masks down, shall we?
Oh.
Okay, we have one more special thing to talk about tonight, and I have the privilege of presenting to the board and our public the 2021 Lake Central Teachers of the Year. And out of about 550 classroom instructors, 30 people were nominated by their peers, and the former Teachers of the Year narrowed that down based on the strength of the comments that came in to 6 people. And so the first I'd like to do is mention those other finalists who did not get named Teachers of the Year, but Scott King from Kaler and our math department head, Charity Lyda Watson, 2nd grade, Michelle Calhoun, Grimmer, special education, and Amy Ramirez, Protzman, 4th grade. And now, without further ado, I will announce our winners. But first I want to read a comment about each of them. And these were written by their peers, and it was material such as this that the committee used to select the winner. So first, in alphabetical order, Kendall Smith, high school chemistry. Kendall Smith is a colleague who shows his passion for helping students succeed every day inside and outside of the classroom. Not enough words can be said about him as a colleague and a teacher. This year he stands out even more with his student-led study on COVID presence in public school staff. He helped 3 students at Lake Central work on a now published scientific article researching the results of COVID spread in a public education setting. Congratulations, Kendall. And this year's second honoree, Michelle Snow, Bibbich, 4th grade. And one of Michelle's peers noted, Michelle goes above and beyond the call of duty. She teaches every day with excellence. Whenever she is in the hall, she makes connections with students from other classes. She improves the staff morale by planning after-school meetups, inviting others to join her for lunch, and by being welcoming to all. Congratulations, Michelle.
And do you mind standing for a picture, please?
We want to thank everybody for coming out this evening to the reception and for being at this ceremony. It's a touching night, especially for the people who have given a big chunk of their life and their heart to the students we serve. And we certainly appreciate you coming out this evening, but more importantly, we thank you for all you've done day in and day out to help our students. So we are going to go on to the remainder of our business meeting of the board. But if any of you have other things you'd rather do, this would be the time to exit. Thank you.
I know. She was just so cute when we were talking to her at the table. Oh.
I'm Irish Catholic. Did you write it? Sarah and I wrote it together.
You ready? Okay, we're going to resume our business meeting of the board, and my third item this evening is to just share some 10,000-foot view information with the board about the conclusion of the legislative session, and I believe Mr. James will get a little more into the weeds on some of the details, specifically the impact for our schools, and of course, it'll still take some time to get total clarity on that. But we want to begin by thanking our locally elected officials in the General Assembly, Mr. Slager, Mrs. Olthoff, Mr. Niemeyer, for making school funding a point of emphasis in this 2-year budget. When the Next Level Teacher Compensation Commission reported in December 2020 that we had fallen significantly behind the teacher salaries, especially in neighboring Midwestern states, and that this was contributing greatly to the teacher shortage, our General Assembly listened. Specifically, they addressed 3 items, and thankfully, in most of these metrics, we're doing quite well already, but it's important to note that while it helps a lot of other districts to get to a better level of compensation for teachers, it also will greatly enhance our ability to stay competitive and make sure that we retain our high-quality instructors. And those 3 goals were to establish a $40,000 teacher minimum salary by paying all full-time teachers at least $40,000 beginning next year. Also, one of the emphases was to prohibit districts from spending less money on teacher salaries year over year, and I think we've consistently been able to do that. And then finally, to require teacher salaries to constitute at least 45% of each district's tuition support allotment. And we've done that quite well already as well. I also want to share that we begin informal negotiations with our Teachers Association tomorrow. I shared a tentative list of what we're going to be talking about with you earlier this evening. And I just want to close by saying this renewed commitment to K-12 education, I believe, demonstrates a greater appreciation of what our teachers do. And now we have the opportunity to make an impact on our staff. And again, we thank our General Assembly for using that research piece from December to make some decisions that will help all educators in the state of Indiana continue to do what we know is so important, and that is prepare our kids for life after school. So, again, thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to our Director of Human Resources Personnel, Mrs. Mucha.
Thank you very much. We're recommending that the following personnel items be approved.
We have a motion by Dr. Malco,
Second.
second by Dr. Medlin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. My second item is to get your approval for hiring additional counselors, especially at the elementary level.
Move to
As
approve.
we plan for next year, it's not only the learning gap that we're worried about, it's also the social emotional for our children. Keeping in mind that some of the kids haven't been back in school for a year, it's causing a great deal of anxiety. Parents have lost jobs, parents have had their hours cut. We need to support our children or they will not be able to make up that learning gap. We are asking for increased counseling for our elementary students, 2 counselors or social workers at the elementary level. This would enable them to have more individual and group sessions with our students. It would also be a positive way to use ESSER money to help our students be more successful. So I am asking for the addition of 2 mood counselors at the elementary level.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall,
Second.
second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion?
So then, Mrs. Mucha, then these social workers, counselors, whatever, will be stationed to help the elementary,
Yes,
K through 4?
yes,
Okay, pre-K through 4, whatever.
right,
Okay,
yes.
all right. And do we have a need or a concern for middle school?
Well, the middle school at this time, they do have a couple of counselors in each one, so let's see
You're
if
good.
we can get them ready at the elementary level, better prepared then to meet the demands of middle school.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being on the cutting edge of getting that out there and getting this process going, because as you say, we know there's going to be issues.
It is going to be
So
an
let's
issue,
be
and it's
prepared.
due to the whole group together that works
Absolutely.
on this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. And I have one professional leave for Christian Flores also. I'm asking for your permission.
Move that we approve.
All right, we have a motion by Dr. Medlin,
Second.
second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we are going to move straight to Mrs. Gramala, our Director of Student Services.
Apologize, my notes are on my phone tonight, so. First, before I start, since Representative Slager is here, I just want to thank him for the increased funding that was pushed through for special education and our English language learners. That's a big help to us, so we appreciate that. At our last work session, I mentioned our preschool screenings, and Dr. Malkow asked a question about that. So I just wanted to share some information with the whole group about our preschool screening process. So we hold community screenings monthly, and those are for any parents in the community who have any concerns about their preschool-age children. And we also use that as a screening method for parents who want to bring their child to our preschool as a peer mentor. Our preschools are primarily to serve our students with special needs, but then we also have peer mentors who attend for their regular preschool experience. And they're just enrolled as a regular community preschool child. So any student seeking enrollment must be screened prior to starting, whether their parents have concerns or they're looking for a mentor position. So at our screenings, like I said, they're held monthly. We did have to restructure them a little bit this year due to COVID to kind of make things safer, but we have anywhere from 3 to 5 students who come in at a time slot. We have our preschool staff members set up in stations, and the students rotate through. It's a basic preschool screening. We use an instrument called the Dial-4, and they're assessed on different areas of development. Their cognitive skills, motor skills, speech and language skills. One of our speech language pathologists conducts a hearing test for the students to make sure that's okay. And then we also work with the Cherville Lions Club to provide vision screenings. And we have actually identified some students for parents with some vision concerns. So based on the results of the screening, students are either cleared to enroll as peers in our program, or they're referred on for further evaluation if there are concerns about lags in development. So when we look at our numbers last year compared to this year, obviously last year our final 3 screenings of the school year were canceled due to COVID. But we screened a total of 96 students last year, and that was with the 3 canceled screenings. We actually held our final screening of the school year today. We've screened a total of 84 students this year. And because of our change in procedure, we did, Robin Mestrich, who is one of my administrative assistants, gets all the calls to schedule screening appointments. And if parents had pretty significant concerns, we referred those students right on to evaluations this year instead of bringing them through our screening process, just as a way to keep our numbers down as far as folks in the building for the screenings. So, and then based on that, students enroll in our preschool. So that's our preschool screening process. All the information is on the website. If anyone's interested, the dates have already been set for next school year, so the information is up there. We typically send that out to the principals at some point during the school year. They put it in their newsletters. A lot of word of mouth business for us too. So that's our process. Any questions?
So you said 84 students, is that typical?
So it's a little bit lower than what we've done in the past. Typically, we're probably closer. So we screened about 100 last year, and that was with those final 3 being canceled. So it is a lower number this year, and our overall preschool numbers were a little bit lower. I think we see more parents this year, especially those 3-year-olds, maybe deciding we're just going to wait, and maybe do 1 year of preschool just
Sure.
because of the COVID concerns.
Thank you.
So can you remind me, because I know there's been changes, where are the preschools located now? Is there one in each building?
No, we have 4 classrooms at Watson, 2 at Bibbich, and then 1 at Holman. And our program at Holman is really a specialized program for students with autism.
So then you will have another screening in June and July?
We do not screen during the summer. We already have a list of students for our August screening, so we're already scheduling that far in advance. Okay,
Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
information.
of course, thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to our Director of Business Services, Mr. James.
Thank you. My first item is to seek your approval for the donations that were included in the board packet.
I move that we accept the donations as written.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin and a second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. My next item is I want to talk a little bit about this year's funding per student. So you'll have 2 handouts in front of you. One is a summary page that says analysis of fiscal year 21 funding per student, and then we have a table. So usually I give this to the board sometime in the spring, but with everything going on, it just we had other things that we were more focused on. So again, this
Excuse
is
me,
for
Ralph, is there an extra one that I could give one to Mr. Slager?
I can give.
You've
You're
got
gonna
it?
give it to him?
Yeah. Oh, either way. Oh, you're welcome. I figure it's information you'll want to know. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, so here we go. So again, this is for funding for this year. So many people don't realize that different school districts, every school district gets a different amount of funding per student across the state. There is what's called the school funding formula, and the General Assembly allocates X amount of dollars into the formula, and it literally is a long 7-step formula to determine how much funding per kid each student, each school district gets. So what I get from the DOE each year is a listing of the amounts per public schools, and please keep in mind that this is all traditional schools and your charter schools. So I'm not going to go through this as much detailed as I may have in the past, but I just want to give you the information that you will see the schools highlighted in gray are all charter schools. The ones in more of the orangish color are region schools around here, or some of our neighboring districts. I've noted which ones have gone to their taxpayers and attempted to do operating referendums. I've noted which ones have passed, which ones have failed, and so forth. And if you go to the last page of the chart is where you usually find us. And there we are. Out of 371 public schools, we rank 347th in the funding. It's traditionally where we have been. Back in 2009, I think we were on the bottom, but Zionsville's had that distinction here for as long as I remember. So just some other highlights, 39 of the top 45 funded school districts are charter schools. But our amount, it has been increasing due to the works of the General Assembly. Again, this is just more for detail purposes. On the next subsequent pages, I show what the funding level has been for each of the school districts in Lake Porter and LaPorte County for the last 9 years, and the percentage increases. And then I've also included just the same data in a chart form that shows the 16 school districts in Lake County and where Lake Central falls in relationship with the other school districts in the county. So we are currently second to Munster toward the bottom. And really, this is the reason where, if you can see a pattern here, the school funding formula really has what's called two parts. There's the foundation, and the foundation is the dollar amount per kid that everyone gets, so for all schools. And then the second component was it's called the complexity index. And the complexity component is where there's additional funding given for the number of kids you have impoverished, free reduced lunch, food stamps, and TANF, so forth. So it's all based on demographics. So the school districts that have a more struggling population, they're going to get more dollars per kid. We can all agree that it takes more dollars to educate those students. They don't necessarily have the support at home. They need the extra attention. And so you can look at that at all the details. It is pretty clear. So that is why us, Crown Point, and Munster are more toward the one end, where your Gary, East Chicago, Lake Ridge are on the other end. So we're fortunate that if you look at the last page, I just kind of summarized a little bit in different colors of how the highest funded school district in the state it was generally declining for a while, and the legislator has, over the years, really tried to widen the gap, sort of. So the top was coming down, you can see the bottom was kind of going up, and we were following that same pattern. And so the gap is closer now than it has been in 2009 and subsequent years. Now again, this has nothing to do with the budget that was just passed within the last 2 years. This is for fiscal year 21. So we will see this potentially even closing more. I would like to think that some of those school districts toward the bottom will receive more dollars, but as we're going to get to here in a minute, all school districts are going to be getting more money. So all the lines should probably move up as well. So we are, as Dr. Vracko said, we're fortunate for that. So again, I'm not going to go to all the details of all 371 schools here. But feel free to look at it. I've summarized some of the analysis of how the amounts have changed from one year to the next. And honestly, when it's a 2-year budget, the amount the second year, which we're talking about here, is not that much different than the first year, where you see changes more so as moving forward in the next upcoming year. So, any questions just off the top before I move into this upcoming budget session? No? Okay, so now I just want to kind of recap the 2021 General Assembly, and most importantly, House Enrolled Act 1001, which is the state budget. And so Larry touched on this a little bit, but the state budget is all based upon the revenues that they project to come in. It's just like your house or my house. We'll spend, we figure out how much money is coming in, and that's what we're going to be allowed to spend this year. So with the pandemic a year old at this point, and then some, we really didn't know what the outlook was going to be. In November of 20, the outlook was, revenues were behind, businesses were closed, so the amount of income tax, people were working less last year, which means income tax revenue was going to be down. Sales tax revenue was down. Some of that was never coming back. There was a delay in income tax from the prior year, but when people weren't working, how was it going to be? So in November, we were really just kind of hoping there would be no cuts, maybe just be flatlined. Then the first forecast comes out in December, and that's what the General Assembly uses as their basis for preparing the budget from January until mid-April. And at that point, things were looking a little better. And the thought was there might be around $850 million of new money to be spent statewide on all state programs. And then you just started hearing grumblings throughout the months that things are looking good, things are looking good. And then finally in mid-April, the latest revenue forecast came out, and there was going to be more than $2 billion of new revenue projected for the next biennium. So what did the General Assembly do at that point? They pumped a lot of money into K-12 education, which I want to get into now, along with hitting some other areas at the state level that I'm not going to get into because that's not really my area. So there's been over a $1 billion increase over the biennium for K-12 education. For the following year, and those are the largest percentages we've seen in 20 years. So for the second year of the biennium, there's going to be almost $8.2 billion in the K-12 allocation, which constitutes 50% of the state budget. As Larry mentioned, the teachers' compensation report came out in December, and in order to try to help teacher salaries increase, it was estimated in that report that approximately $600 million was needed to be invested by the state into K-12 in order to make the salaries more competitive, and that was achieved in this new bill. So again, we're thankful for that. Now it is up to the local school boards and local school districts to turn around and allocate that money to how they desire, mostly for teachers. The General Assembly does recognize that local school districts have local control on how they spend those funds. So it wasn't, they couldn't mandate it that it all has to go toward teacher salaries. But I want the board to know and remember that lots of times school districts negotiate with their teachers union when new money is available, and it doesn't necessarily all go to salaries. Healthcare costs increase every year, and teachers are very protective of their health insurance. And so often they will rather have the money put toward benefits in order to maintain the benefits without having it seen on the paycheck. Well, if you don't realize that what's going on in negotiation, it looks as if you're not passing that money on to teachers or other staff members, but really you are. We often say that compensation is the total package. It's not just what is on the salary line. And I'll mention another issue of that later on. But also remember that even though our teachers are our first priority, they're the ones we negotiate with, but 2/3 of our staff are not teachers. So we always need to make sure that whatever new money we're getting, any raise that we give to any employee, it's not just a salary amount. There's taxes and teacher retirement on top of that, which always adds 20% approximately to the cost. So we always need to take that in consideration, and we need to take in consideration all of our staff. So when we see that we might be getting 4.5% new money, that doesn't necessarily translate to teachers are going to get a 4.5% raise. So that's part of the negotiation process. We will do all that we can, and we definitely want to put more money to that. Some of the specifics about the budget bill, though, and Becky kind of alluded to some of this stuff already, is that, so I mentioned the foundation. That is the amount that everybody starts with. That amount is increasing 5.1% in fiscal year 22, and then another 4% in fiscal year 23. And that's good because that affects every school. That's the basis for all. It doesn't matter what your poverty level is. It doesn't matter if you've had a referendum. Everybody gets that same amount, and that helps all kids in the state. There's also an increase in the complexity grant aspect that I mentioned of 2.7%. Special ed grants are increased 5% in the first year, and then an additional 10% the second year. Career and tech ed, we talked about this, I believe it was in the House version of the bill, those introductory programs that they consider less than moderate, that was stricken from funding. And we had a big concern of that because if there was going to be no funding for those classes, there could be many school districts that were then just going to drop those programs because they weren't going to get the funding. By keeping that in there, that keeps the classes and more of a chance that those students will explore. They'll take and then maybe move on and go through those upper levels. So the final budget maintain the funding that was in there, that is currently there at those levels, so we're appreciative of that. Other grants, such as the Teacher Appreciation Grant, the Honors Grant, the Summer School Grant, and the Curricular Materials Reimbursement Grants were all retained at their current levels. Originally, there was verbiage about December graduates that currently, when we do our February count for ADM, since they're not here anymore, they don't get counted and we don't get funding for them. And so there's been a push recently to, that's really unfair in the school district here. You have 50 kids graduate, you lose the money on them, but you didn't really cut your expenses at all. You're kind of being punished for having these kids punished early. So I think in the original House version, or there was at least a separate bill out there that was going to allow December grads to be counted in the February count. Unfortunately, that was not included in the final budget, but that will be, we can take that up another time. And then finally, students that have received their instruction virtually, we'll go back to getting funded at 85%. If you recall, the Department of Ed and then the General Assembly in their first week changed that for this year only because of the coronavirus, where everyone was getting funded at 100%. Didn't matter if you were an e-learner or if you're in person. So next fall, if a student has less than 50% of their time in the classroom, the school district will only get funded for 85%. And as Larry mentioned, there were other three aspects from the compensation study commission study. The one was setting a $40,000 teacher salary minimum. At Lake Central, we're currently at $47,300. We are the second highest starting salary in the state. And so through negotiations, we will look to continue to address that as we always do. We feel that getting people in the door is the key. And once you get them in here, it's a great place to work, and we don't want to lose them. So getting them here is the first thing. Second, as Larry said, it prohibits the districts from spending less money on total teacher salaries than they did the prior year. With the influx of dollars, that shouldn't be an issue these next 2 years at all. And then finally, requiring teacher salaries to constitute at least 45% of tuition support. Currently, we're around 58%. But as I said, in our mind, it's salaries and your related benefits are all part of the package. If we count how much we contribute to teacher retirement and teachers' taxes and into their health insurance, our percentage is approximately 78% of our tuition support goes toward teacher salaries and benefits. There's been talk amongst my peers, though, who are currently under that 45% mark, and they have brought up some good points that doesn't affect us so much, but could be an issue that with Hal here he can hear, is that when these figures come up, they look at our financial reports and they see how much is coded toward salaries. There's a different code for teacher salaries and classified staff salaries and so forth. Well, for school districts that are part of a co-op for special ed or for go to the Career Center for CTE, you're paying X amount of dollars. You're writing a claim. You're writing a check to the Northwest Indiana Special Ed Co-op, or previously we were sending a check to Westlake. Well, all that money is going towards salaries and benefits of teachers. You've just consolidated with other districts to be more cash efficient. Well, all that money that those school districts are paying for those is not being part of this calculation because it's not coded as salaries. So while up until through the 18-19 school year when we were under the Westlake umbrella, approximately 12% of our education fund funding was paid out, passed through to Westlake because that's where our staff was paid for. Well, we would knock 10% off of our calculation if we were still under that umbrella. So just because a school district has tried to consolidate expenses and join co-ops with other units, which is great, lots of these small districts don't have the opportunity to run their own special ed program or CTE program. It's something that they're concerned about, and it's something that we have time to work with our legislators about that may not have been known at that time. So I think it's important. I would rather see count salaries and benefits and raise the number to 65, 70%. You know, but make it incorporating, and then also the same thing when you have those expenditures that you're paying to a co-op, that should be counted as well, really, because if you weren't part of the co-op, you'd be paying them directly. So that's about it. We are very appreciative. This is the best funding we've seen since I've been on this side of the table, and Larry talked about it. We've all talked about it. We really are appreciative of the efforts. So any questions for me that I have regarding this?
I was a little bit confused, maybe I misheard you. Did you say that a student that attends less than 50%, we only get 85% of the money?
Right. So currently, we have school districts across the state have students that are e-learners. We have e-learners here. Under the old law and under how it's going to be effective July 1, if you had someone who's an e-learner, you only get 85% funding for that student because they're not in your building. If you are a school district that has, you're in person 2 days a week and you're e-learning for 3 days a week, same principle is going to apply because they're going to be in the classroom less than 50% of the time, so they're only going to get 85% of that funding. I don't know how many districts are going to be doing that in the fall, but it's something for them to think of if they wanted to still offer some sort of e-learning program for their students. They're not going to get fully funded for those kids. So that's a decision each school district is going to have to make.
But during this past year, they did get.
That is correct.
They did receive 100%?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's a change.
Yeah, it is a change. Yes, the first semester was allowed at 100% by the Department of Ed, and then the whole year was officially approved by the General Assembly immediately in January. So.
Madam President, after hearing such a report that Rob has given us, I think a round of applause should be directed both to the General Assembly and the signature to provide the funding that you've so indicated. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping it straight for us.
Hey,
That's a lot.
we're good. You know, lots of it has to do with communication, and we just you talk to people, and we're fortunate and we're glad it's worked out. So, any more questions for me? All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Which brings us to public comments. Mrs. Nowacki is saying no.
And Mr. Slager, since you're here, do you have a few words to share with us? Because we certainly do appreciate your efforts, and we want you to know that.
First of all, I have to compliment Mr. James on his comprehensive report, leaving me pretty much nothing more to add. Just a couple of little points. It was a very unusual session because of, as Rob talked about, the initial revenue forecast and then what finally came out. It was a scramble to try to rebuild the budget, as you can imagine. And to some degree, it was almost too good to be true. But what we did, we had allocated some $400 million at K-12, and with this extra revenue, we were able to fully fund the Teacher Compensation Commission report for the governor. Basically, they projected that public ed was about $600 million behind, or K-12 education's 600. So we put the entire $600 million in. And what I want to make clear about that, that's a recurring expense. That's not just $600 million this biennium. That's going forward indefinitely because those are salaries. We couldn't have done that on just stimulus money. Some people have suggested, well, that was stimulus. No, that's stimulus money is one-time money. This is because we anticipate ongoing revenues to continue. The stimulus money does provide us a little stopgap going forward in that we use stimulus money to pay down some other one-time costs that will allow us more leeway going forward. For instance, we paid off all state debt, all of it. Buildings that we owed money on, rail, the South Shore, any of these projects where we owed money, it's all been defeased, paid off, or will be because of this one-time money. We have one pension fund that was not considered fully funded. It was the pre-1996 teachers' pension fund. We were able to pay that up with an additional $600 million into that fund. Now, what all that does is that service that we would normally have had to concern ourselves with going forward, we don't have to concern ourselves with. That's revenue that we can use for other things going forward. Additional contributions to that pension fund are greatly mitigated going forward in future budgets. So we'll feel that benefit actually going forward, and that gives us comfort that we'll be able to hold the line with that additional $600 million added to K-12 education. So that's where it's really important. You'll probably also hear something about the fact that we've moved up the balance of our reserve. Everybody talked about the surplus. I call it a reserve. The surplus is our annual revenue over expenditures, but the reserve is what we held for the rainy day, if you will. And boy, did it rain in last year. And nobody can argue the need for that reserve because we spent more than half of it down just keeping things going. And in so doing, we were prepared to launch out of this pandemic, which we're doing, and which is why the revenue report is so good. So you're going to hear where we're moving that up and increasing that reserve. That's largely because if it's too good to be true, we want to make sure we got a little leeway. 2 years from now, if all things happen as we expected, we may have some additional money to spend. We'll deal with that then. But that's kind of a little cushion that we've got just in case it's not as rosy as what we thought. Just a couple other comments. Rob already talked about multiple grants that are going to education. I won't go through those again. Talked about the stimulus. We spent $100 million over the biennium to fund mental health initiatives. A serious problem, made more serious with this pandemic for sure. This is not education related, but it's important to all of us. We put $40 million each year in additional funding for direct service providers. These are people that deal with individuals with severe intellectual and developmental disabilities. We were having a terrible time in our state because Medicaid could not fund these people at any kind of a decent wage, and they were being lost to private businesses, and it was very difficult. And I remember the lobbyists coming around, and they were lobbying for $40 million. Why $40 million? Well, they felt that at $40 million, that could provide them a salary of $15 an hour. And of course, originally, when the first revenue forecast came out, and the first budget, we were at half that. We were able to do $20 million. And with this additional revenue, we funded that at the full $40 million so that they can get up to $15 an hour. And I could go through just all kinds of other Medicaid reimbursements that we're able to do now that we couldn't have done before. So it was, there were some things that I know that Larry and I discussed late in the session. Rob mentioned the fact that we lost the funding when we graduate students early. That's a big deal. I understand that. But we got $1 billion. What are you going to say? So I'm happy to take any questions if you're wondering what about this or how that happened.
Well, Hal, I know that you were working on the Indiana insurance being applicable in Illinois for young children that would need to go to some of the hospitals there. Did that come to fruition?
Yes, the governor signed that this last week. That was Medicaid reimbursement to out-of-state children's hospitals. We had a terrible problem in Northwest Indiana in particular, but also in Louisville and Cincinnati, where we had Hoosiers' children with long-term maintenance requirements where they were being forced to go to Indianapolis for where they were on Medicaid. And we were able to adjust that amount so that those out-of-state hospitals are happy to care for Hoosier children and allowing parents to stay at home rather than staying in Indianapolis. So that was signed.
That's very nice, very nice. One other question. Is there anything in there to help with veterans, homeless veterans?
Well, we have, there are a number of programs, veterans' homes and what have you, so that's always been a priority. I don't know specifically how those numbers moved year over year with the new budget. I'd have to look into that.
You know, I always just wonder because, never mind, I'm not going to get into it, but some of my experiences, but thank you so much.
Okay, sure, thank you.
Is there anybody
Thank you,
else?
Mr.
Thank you.
Slager.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
All right, we'll move on to our board comments and consideration of future agenda items. Start with Mr. Marshall tonight.
Why, thank you. I think at this point, after a wonderful night of acknowledgement and recognition, any further comments on my behalf would be completely superfluous. So that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Malko.
Totally agree with you, Mr. Marshall, except, gals, at the next board meeting, I know you started your intervention plan based on student loss of learning. Could you finish that for us? You were going to work on some more avenues, I think. Is that a yes? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Medlin.
Happy Teacher Appreciation Week and all the appreciation tonight. It really was heartwarming to see all the teachers being recognized and staff and administrators. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Congratulations again to our retirees and our Teachers of the Year. Good job.
They've said it all, but I just want to say good luck in these next 3 weeks of school. My daughter's counting down, and we got some sports teams doing some good things out there too. So.
Oh, by the way, I heard from Mr. Sander tonight that Lake Central softball is number 2 in the state, only behind Ron Colley, I believe.
Yeah.
So yay, rah.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move to Dr. Varacco, board calendar or future activities.
Okay, well, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we've got 19 days of school left, according to several doors at Kaler. So I think that motivates the kids to work hard as they count it down. So, but we'll be back here in 2 weeks, and check your calendars online. There's a lot of activities going on, as Mrs. Sue said, and hope to see you at some of those things.
And I'm sorry, Larry, is graduation confirmed for the 30th at 2:30? Correct. Okay.
All right, do we have a motion for adjournment? All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Or adjourned.